Hi there and welcome to the final Silverbird Selection roundup video, and having looked at the best and worst games in the range, I thought it might be fun to look at the most average games because we never celebrate the mediocre very much, do we? So in this video we're going to do that with the 5 most average games from the Silverbird and Firebird range. So this is a purely mathematical thing, whereas my previous videos I did things based on my own personal preferences. This one's purely mathematical. There were 5 games that all got my average rating of 6.1. So what I've done is taken those and then look at their individual ratings as well to categorise them into best to worst, or what I should probably say is least to most average of the 5 average games. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but that's what it's going to be about. So join me for this little celebration of the mediocre as we look at the 5 most average games from the Firebird budget range.
Kicking off this list of mediocre games in 5th place is Twinky Goes Hiking, a Silver Range release from 1986. Bounding across the landscape comes Twinky and his twin brother Reg. These two lads are outdoor sports fanatics who are particularly keen on competing with each other at cross-country racing. Take care though, because running over the rough alpine terrain can be hazardous, with pitfalls, rocks, rivers and wild animals all presenting potential obstacles. The consumption of edibles along the way wins both Twinky and Reg extra points and more energy. At the end of the course, the winner will attain the affection of the ever-vivacious Darling Twinker. This game can be played by 1 or 2 players and the aim is to reach Twinker before your opponent. The course is over several sections and includes many exhausting uphill jogs. Obstacles may be avoided by either pressing the fire button for a small jump or pushing the joystick upwards for a big jump. You may also accelerate forward by pressing the joystick to the right. I gave this one above average scores for presentation and graphics with 8 for each because it's got some cute sprites and nice animation. It's below average on sound though, with the music being absolutely dreadful, and then when you come to the playability, the idea of a competitive run through the wilderness is not that bad, but the execution is pretty poor. The somewhat random generation of levels means that sometimes it'll be quite easy and other times near impossible to make it to the end of the course. Overall I'd say that average rating is about right. It's not an awful game, but it won't take long to get bored with it. At number 4 is U.F.O, a Silver Range release from 1986. Hostile unidentified flying objects have been detected approaching New York, and the only fighter capable of tackling the alien craft is the experimental F-21 Condor. As a Condor flyer, your priority mission is to destroy the UFO force threatening the Big Apple. If you're successful in this highly dangerous sortie, you will be required to transit the hypersonic air corridor to the next theatre of alien operations. Flyers should note that the excessive use of firepower will cause the fighter to overheat and temporarily short-circuit the weapons systems. Once all the UFOs are destroyed on the stage, the fighter will automatically enter the transit corridor, through which you must safely guide it in order to reach the next level. At the end of each corridor you may replenish energy and shields before entering the next battle. This was another one that was above average on the graphics front, with some very nice backgrounds in particular. Most of the other ratings are in the average range, with presentation of 6 and sound of 5. The in-game sounds are very generic, though the title screen tune is perfectly acceptable. For gameplay I rated this slightly below average at 4. It's a very mundane gallery shooter with levels that seem to go on forever, with no indication of how long they'll last. The between stage racing minigame and ability to top up shields and energy in a store are nice touches, but the core game is so drawn out and dull that you may never see them. Once again, it definitely lives up to that average rating. It's not a bad game to look at and there is a playable game there, but it's not much fun and barely worth the $1.99 asking price. In 3rd place we have Gunstar, a Silver Range release from 1987. After an unprovoked attack on Earth by a people unknown, our primitive defences were quickly overwhelmed and the Earth's population enslaved. The survival of the human race rested in the hands of a research team hidden in a subterranean moon base. After extensive experimentation they produced a range of fightercraft called Pulse Fighters. They became known as the Gunstar Fleet, their mission the destruction of the alien forces and the liberation of Earth. In this shoot 'em up you must progress through 5 stages. Firstly the fighter stage, where you must shoot all the aliens while avoiding their fire. That's then followed by the asteroids stage, where you must avoid all asteroids to progress to the next stage, which is the alien command ship. Blast the gun turrets to advance to the next level. You then move on to the 4th stage, which features the alloy robot, where you must wipe out the gun turrets guarding the robot. And finally there's a docking stage, where you must dock with the mothership to refuel. This one edges just a little closer to averagedom, with all my ratings for this being between 4 and 7. The presentation is not bad, with a decent title screen and high score table, while giving each of your 3 pilots some personality with a profile screen is a fun idea. The graphics are a mixture of single colour Spectrum-esque ships and a few unremarkable larger craft with more colour but not much originality, so graphics got a bang on average score of 5. Gameplay wise, it's another bland space shooter. Multiple stages with different objectives is a good idea in principle, but none of them are particularly fun, being either too easy or too hard, and the fact you get thrown back to the start of the first mission every time you lose a life is just infuriating. In second place is Galax-i-birds, released in the Silver Range packaging in 1986. Millions of years ago, long before time began, God created the Galax-i-birds in their many different guises. The Galax-i-birds had no home and wandered through space looking for somewhere they could call their own. After spending several millennia on inhospitable planets, the Galax-i-birds headed for Earth, determined to wipe out mankind and settle on Earth for time and all eternity. They've wiped out everyone they could find with their deadly psychic chemistry, but you were clever and hid under a table to escape their evil. Now you're the only human left except for a few chartered surveyors in Milton Keynes, so you must put on a brave face, kill the Galax-i-birds and save the world. This is yet another space shooter, and with all the scores but packaging being 5 or 6, this is almost as average as it gets. This one was thrown together by Sensible Software as a bit of a joke, I'd guess, but Firebird was willing to publish it, and those that bought it got a Galaxian clone with a bit of humour in it, but some infuriating gameplay. The graphics have some character and variety with all the different birds coming at you, and if you get far enough through the game, some enemies based on sprites from well-known Commodore 64 games will appear. The sound is fairly forgettable, though supposedly the music is randomly generated. That would make sense since it's not particularly good. The gameplay is straightforward blasting action, but the quirky formations of birds and their erratic movement mean it can be really hard to make consistent progress. Sometimes you might get through lots of stages, whereas others you might find yourself quickly losing all your lives on the 3rd or 4th stage. As a result, it can be pretty enraging to play, and whether you're good at it or not, you'll have seen all there is to see after 10 minutes of playing it. And finally, in first place, the most average game in the Firebird range is Mad Nurse, released in the Silver Range packaging in 1986. The object of the game is to score as many points as possible by picking up the naughty babies and putting them back to bed, whilst collecting stray medicine bottles. Putting babies into a cot will give you a bonus, the size of which is dependent on how many are already in there. The more babies there are in the cot, the less the bonus, and the more likely they are to hop out again. You must ensure that the babies stay clear of the electric power points, medicine bottles and the lift shaft. When things get too hectic, you can press the fire button to release stun gas, and for a few seconds the babies will stop moving, allowing you to capture those extra specially naughty ones. You start the game with 3 trainee nurses, and each nurse is allowed 3 mishaps before she's fired. Simon Pick's zany hospital-based Baby Collect 'em Up comes out as the most average game by virtue of having 3 of the 5 review scores being 5 out of 10. Packaging and presentation both got a 7, but the 3 most critical scores, graphics, sound and playability, all got 5. The graphics have some character but are simplistic and blocky for the most part, and every stage is just a variation on the same selection of background objects. The background tune is reasonably well composed but repetitive, and the sound effects don't leave a lasting impression other than the digitised baby screams. The gameplay is fun for a while and definitely a little bit sick, but endlessly returning babies to their cribs soon gets boring, and it takes way too long for the game to get difficult enough to offer a challenge. As a result, it's the perfect example of an average budget game. If you like playing for high scores, you might get an hour of fun out of it, but then it'd probably go on your shelf and never get played again.
So those are the 5 most average budget games from the Firebird range for the Commodore 64, and that effectively rounds off the Silverbird Selection series. I will be doing one more video as and when I find that final game in the collection, which is Chimera, but until then, that is it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this over the last 2 years. It's been exactly 2 years, almost to the day, since I started this on the 11th of April 2020, so a nice way to round things off. I've enjoyed this for the most part for the last 2 years. It's been ups and downs in terms of the quality of the games, but it's always been fun to play them and review them. Hope you've enjoyed it too. So let me know in the video comments any thoughts about this final video and also the series in general. and I'll be back soon with some new series. I haven't quite decided exactly what yet, but I think there's going to be a couple of new series and also resurrecting an old series from the past too, I think. So until then, thanks very much for watching this video and see you next time.